Here we go. Hey, what's up? I'm Richard, founder of Sierra Madre. We make the most comfortable gear for the wild. Today I want to go over one of the #1 questions we get from people that are new to hammock camping. And that is, why do I freeze my butt off in my hammock? So what I thought I'd do is go over a few of the basics with everybody today about staying warm inside of a hammock. So a lot of times when people get started with hammocks, they will jump into their hammock with a sleeping bag. And no fault of your own, of course, but let me show you what that's like when you try and do that into a hammock. It's quite the challenge, first of all. So I'll save you the struggle on your first try. I've got one of my old sleeping bags here, and I'll just kind of give you an idea of what it's like to try and get into a sleeping bag while you're in your hammock. Okay. The tricky part, honestly, is getting the part underneath you so you can zip it up. Okay. Kind of makes you feel like an inchworm, I'm not gonna lie. Okay. Then the next struggle is going to be zipping up the mummy sleeping bag while you're in your hammock. If you don't have all of the back material out far enough, it's going to be a struggle. I've done it, I've tried it a lot, especially back when I first got started. I think everybody kind of uses what they have, right? And I definitely had a lot of issues with getting all of the fabric back around me and then figuring out how to get it zipped up so I would stay warm. The problem is that isn't even going to solve the issue. The real issue is, dang it, the real issue is actually what's happening down here. And so what people that go from ground camping to air camping generally have to learn the hard way is, what in the world, why is my butt so cold? And even when it's not that cold outside, this will happen. And so it'll be 70 degrees at night, and if you're not sleeping with anything underneath you, you'll actually get really cold really fast inside of a hammock. Let me explain why. And so the real trick here is that hammocks are amazing for hot weather. In fact, that's why I got started in hammocks, was I'm from the deep south of Mississippi, and camped all over the South, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama. First backpacking trip was in the SIP. And anyways, so when it's warm, you cannot camp in a tent. Like, it's going to be sweat by the gallon at night. But in a hammock, it's actually much cooler. Now, the opposite is true, of course. When you get into colder weather, which is when I love to camp, things get cold fast in a hammock. And it's really simple. It's just thermodynamics. All that happens is, let's pretend this is your body right here. When you press down on that insulation in your mummy bag and you compress it, you're actually turning that loft into this, into basically nothing. Because the loft is what is actually going to retain your heat. Now when you press down and it pushes up against the bottom layer of your hammock, the insulation is basically naught. There is none. There's no loft now. And when wind blows and hits the hammock and wraps around your body, it basically does something tricky called convective cooling. And all that means is it's sucking the heat right out of your body. And so when you camp in the air, you'll notice that unusually and extremely, you're gonna feel the heat being sucked right out of your backside while you're in the hammock. The easiest way to combat that is with an underquilt. An underquilt. So let me show you what an underquilt actually is. And it's as simple as what it sounds. It is a quilt that goes underneath your hammock. I'm just gonna snap this in real quick. And it actually looks like, it kind of looks like a sleeping bag on the outside of your hammock. Let me get it set up real quick. You'll be able to see it. So what an underquilt does is it actually provides the insulation for your back and your butt and your shoulders and everything that's touching the hammock basically. And it acts like a big sleeping bag on the outside of your hammock. And the reason this works is it's on the outside. If it were on the inside, it wouldn't work because you would be squishing down the insulation. And so the way that thermodynamics works is the loft of your sleeping bag or your insulation or your quilt is what's going to retain the heat that your body creates. And when your body creates that heat, the best way to stay warm with that heat is to trap it. And so loft actually traps the heat that your body creates, and it keeps you warm throughout the night. And so if you're getting into hammock camping, you're getting started with what we call air camping, which is by far the most comfortable way to camp, in my opinion. If you're getting started with that, you're gonna want an underquilt. That is gonna give you the insulation on the outside of the hammock, and it's gonna keep your butt warm. A little term that I guess the hammock community coined is this abbreviation called CBS, cold butt syndrome. And it is a real deal. If you've ever been in a hammock when it gets down into the 60s, it is chilly. It is chilly. Let me show you what I use to stay warm when I'm camping during these later fall months, because these are by far my favorite times to camp. I actually ditched the mummy style sleeping bag. I don't use a mummy bag anymore. I use either my hybrid trail quilt or our puffle trail quilt. And these are just so much easier to get in and out of when you're in your hammock. So let me show you what it looks like. This is the Inferno underquilt. We've got a couple spots that we can attach it to the hammock. So you're going to notice that when I hop in, I'm no longer compressing my insulation, and I'm actually able to position the insulation right underneath my back, and it's crazy. You can instantly feel the warmth being trapped. I mean, if I were to throw some slack into the underquilt, I would feel that air coming in. But the way I do this, I use a top quilt, And I just have a foot box, my top quilt right here. I stick my feet in there, and then I just got a blanket that goes over the rest of my body. Like so, and you can see the insulation is formed all around my body right now, and that, my friend, is going to keep me from getting any cold butts. Anyways, so if you're new to air camp and you are getting started and you're thinking about like going out and camping when it's a little bit chilly, just know you're going to want some form of insulation to be on your backside. The backside is the vulnerable spot for a hammock. It's beautiful when it's really hot in the summertime, but during winter or late fall, early spring, you're going to need something to keep your warmth in. So fight CBS, grab an underquilt, and that will make your air camping experience way more enjoyable. There's a few little details when you get an underquilt to make sure that you do stay warm, because even with an underquilt, if you don't have kind of the sides or the ends tensioned enough, you might have a gap underneath your body. And what I found is that it's way better to go ahead and get the underquilt snugged up to your hammock fabric so that there aren't any gaps, and let that be next to your body. And the way our Inferno works is we actually attach at diagonal corners. So on our 9-ox we have these little, I'll show you, these little diagonal corners, and they allow you to attach on the side. And since the 9-ox gives you such a diagonal, an aggressive diagonal lay, it's really important to get that underquilt lined up with that diagonal lay. And so we attach to those two corners, and then we'll snug up at the ends and make sure that the underquilt is just barely touching the hammock fabric. And since there's very little stretch in the hammock system, once you sit in it, everything kind of tightens up around you, and you're going to feel the insulation basically next to your body all the way down. That is definitely the best way to stay warm if you're getting started with air camp. Step one, grab an underquilt. Forget the tricky zipper in the mummy bag and grab a top quilt. Those two items are going to make getting in and out of your hammock so much more enjoyable, and they're going to be way more efficient at keeping you warm. Now, with our Inferno, we've got what we call a hybrid top quilt, which still has the mummy hood and the shoulder protection, but it's zipperless. It does not have a zipper, and so getting in and out is super easy. It's just got an open back that allows you to slip in just like you were putting a t-shirt on or something like that. So it's really easy. And then of course our puffle works as a top quilt or an underquilt. And you can find all of this at sierramadregear.com. Just click on warmth and you'll see the Inferno and the puffle. Thankfully, our Inferno is now back in stock. We were out of stock for the longest time, and they're all back in stock finally. We even added a new puffle, the Puffle 20, which is a newly redesigned system. It's actually a little bit larger also. We increased the size of our puffle blanket, and it works as an underquilt or a top quilt. You can also stack multiple puffles together. So really cool. If you're interested in those, go check them out. You can click the link below, or you can go to our website, sierramadregear.com, and click on warmth. Hope that helps. Remember, there is nothing like a comfortable night in the outdoors. Be sure to stay warm on your first air camping trip out into the wild. Do that with an underquilt so you can trap your heat inside of your hammock and stay warm all night. All right, Richard Rhett out. Remember, we're Sierra Madre, and we build the most comfortable gear for the wild. Much love. See ya.